As is our practice here on Breakfast Central, it's time to find out what the big stories that are making the headlines today are saying, and also to analyze them. We'll have a guest joining us shortly. He's Dr. Jide Johnson, and he's the Director of Special Programs, Nigerian Institute of Journalism. He'll be joining us to explore what the front pages are saying. But for now, let's take you through some of the papers. We'll be starting off with the Punch newspaper in Nigeria. And on the front page of the Punch newspaper, the big story says, anger at State's warehouse, rice, delay palliatives sharing. Borno distributes rice to 400,000 households. Workers lament hunger, demand relief. Labour insists 5 billion naira not enough. Gombe promises workers 10,000 naira and Anambra 12,000 naira. We can see them carrying the rice bags. There's a photograph there. Naira slump. Manufacturers' raw material imports hit 8 trillion naira. Associates mourn slain senator's aide, demand killer soldiers arrest. Ogun doctors plan September 1st strike over unpaid allowances. This is actually now becoming it has been embarrassing, but it gets more embarrassing by the day. Every other day is like, they will say, people say it's every Eke market day. We hear of one state in which doctors or medical personnel are striking. September 1st is just in a few days. Yep. And we know how very dire it is when these healthcare professionals go on a strike. It's putting the lives of thousands of Nigerians at risk. So what are we not getting right? What are we not doing right that will make sure that we can stop these incessant strikes? It's frustrating and it's nauseating until you know somebody, or you know someone who knows someone that has lost a family member because the healthcare institutions were on strike. This would not hit as closely as it has.
Well, I mean, good thing now we have a new health minister, Mali Pate. So hopefully we see a reduction in the in the strikes. And hopefully we have somebody who understands what the healthcare sector needs and understands what doctors actually need, understands the level of infrastructure that needs to be put in place, understands the calls for increment in salaries and increment in health, hazard allowances and some of the things that they've been speaking about. Well, hopefully we have that, I know that it's one of the reasons, I think it's part of the reasons that, it was a struggle in the past, because I think that the person who was there initially maybe didn't understand it as well as he should have. So, right. Yeah, so there is that. Let's see what changes.
Okay, how long before we start to then analyze him and say that you've been in office for this period of time, we ought to have seen changes by now? I'm sure that these are conversations that would explore. We have Dr. Jide Johnson, who's the Director of Special Programs, Nigerian Institute of Journalism, Lagos, and he joins us this morning. Thank you very much for your time with us this morning.
It's a pleasure to be with you. Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Now, so we've been looking at the Punch newspaper and seeing some of the top stories. September 1st, we're seeing here that Ogun doctors plan September 1st strike over unpaid allowances. I'm just going to take a few stories and then have you react. Niger, AU plans fresh sanctions. Abdul Salami warns against war. Federal government, states, local governments share 966 billion naira July revenue. EFCC mom as Desiani faces bribery charge in UK. Of course, I'll certainly have you react to the Desiani story. But before we get there, let's quickly talk about Ogun doctors planning September 1st strike over unpaid allowance. And we had talked about how it's an excruciatingly uncomfortable conversation, because number of innocent people will be affected by this strike. At what point, I mean, we've just had new ministers sworn in. At what point is it fair to say that, okay, do we start to analyze their time in office to say that we're expecting to see a change? Do we say, 1 month, 100 days? At what point is a fair time to then start to analyze them? And are we really expecting to see a change in the healthcare sector?
Well, one of the things we need to do is to set timelines and benchmark for us to evaluate. And I think the first benchmark is usually 100 days for public administration. And I think what we should do is in the first 100 days, from Federal Executive Council to State Executive Council, we should evaluate what they've done in the first 100 days and begin to highlight their performances. I think that is critical. The second component part of it is for us to insist whether we pass it as an act of the parliament to ensure that every public official must seek medical help in Nigeria, not abroad. As long as you are working in public service, either as a civil servant, as a public servant, elected or appointed, you must seek medical services in Nigeria. Until we do that, the medical sector will continue to suffer the same problem we keep having year in, year out, because the medical sector is left for those that can't afford it. Those that can afford it, they travel abroad. If the head, the president and the governors and the rest of them, they seek medical help abroad and they have the resources to do that, and sometimes they even use taxpayers' money to secure medical help and medical facilities. They'll care less about what to do about what we have at home. So as far as I'm concerned, those two critical factors are important for us to put an end to this recurrent, annoying and dehumanizing incessant strikes that we have in the medical sector.
All right. And I also like to have you react. Okay, go ahead.
And I love the position of Osarogi, because I joined while he was making his contribution. I think we should add that to it, and then we begin to have a better care sector.
Okay. I'd like you to also react to, still on the front page of the Punch newspaper, the story about EFCC keeping mum as Desiani faces bribery charge in UK.
Well, one of the things I want us to do as the media is for us not to help highlight and create diversion for government inadequacies. You recall all those trials that we have under Buhari's administration, those media trials with respect to the fight against corruption. And evidence have shown that even the corrupt practices under Buhari compared to what we have under Jonathan is a child state. As far as the issue of designing case is concerned, let's wait and see what the Crown Court will do in Great Britain. I don't think we should throw too much emphasis on that. If locally we couldn't prosecute, even those who have been charged with prosecution of economic and financial crimes, the headship of the last two headship were removed unceremoniously. So I don't want us to be distracted by designing case. There are so many issues that we need to focus on in Nigeria with respect to due diligence, with respect to compliance with due processes, with respect to ensuring that nepotism, corruption are dealt with in the country. And we shouldn't be distracted by some media focusing on some celebrating cases that should just be the norm.
All right. On the Daily Trust this morning, there are a couple of stories that we can share with you. The big one there says, Tinubu's 48 ministers to gulp 8.6 billion naira in 4 years. More to be spent on ESTA codes and others. It also says here, earnings to shoot after our FAC's wages review. It is wasteful. Implement Oronsaye report now, says the experts. Also, AU suspends Niger as ECOWAS delegation assures of diplomacy. UK reduces tariff on 3,000 Nigerian products. Pilots of crashed Nigerian Air Force jet buried in Zaria. And also insecurity. Defense Minister demands timeline from service chiefs. I think just a few others. You can't frustrate me, Umahi tells civil servants. British police to arraign Desiani on the 2nd of October over bribery. But these are the big ones. Mr. Johnson, let's quickly get you to speak on, of course, the big one on the screen there. It says Tinubu's 48 ministers to gulp 8.6 billion naira in 4 years. Let's have your thoughts on that one.
Well, when the government came into power, promising us bringing about changes and reducing the cost of governance, and what the government has done is to increase the ministerial portfolio required by the 36 is required by the Constitution. What you have is 48. That's about 33% increase. So you don't need a soothsayer to tell you that it will add to your overhead cost, and then it will also contribute to wastages in government, and then it will be contrary to reduction in the cost of governance that people have been clamoring for. When government is asking us to tighten our belt, whereas government is embarking on a jamboree cabinet. I've said, what meaningful contribution do you think can take place in a cabinet, in a Federal Executive Council meeting that has 78 members, and they only meet for 6 hours? Allot minutes to 78 people in 6 hours. They can't even have the meeting for 6 hours in any case. So let's say, let's be modest. Let's say 6 hours. How many minutes will each of the minister make present his memo? What you just have is just people going to the meeting, nodding their head, coming out with their Babani gang, posting for pictures, and then a lot of serious job will not be done. I've argued this over time. We don't need more than 18 ministry. 18 ministry can be shared across the 6 geopolitical zones, 3 ministers to each of the geopolitical zones. America does not have more than 13 departments. What do we need? 13? And then look at the names of the ministry. You just see there's an overlap and duplicity and multiplicity of functions. And I pointed out that if there is no proper coordination, if there is no proper coordination and proper statement of purpose and responsibility of each of these ministries, there will be clashes. There will be clashes because there are so many overlaps. What's the difference between blue economy, aviation, transportation, and the rest of it? So I don't know. The Federal Minister of Petroleum Oil, the Minister of Petroleum Gas. It's just mere ear splitting, and the approach of the president disappointed a lot of people because he promised to bring about renewal. He promised to bring about to change the conversation as somebody that is fully prepared for governance. But what we are seeing is that it is more of a political cabinet. Cabinet is full of a lot of former governors, those that lost the election, and those that have completed 2 terms. And I don't know, but let's be hopeful. I hope to be wrong and for them to be right, because it is the interest of Nigeria that matters. Yep. It's not my opinion.
All right, quickly, also speak on the insecurity story there. It says the defense minister gives service chiefs, demands a timeline from service chiefs. Quickly, please.
Yeah, it's important for us to provide timelines, considering the resources we have expended on fighting security in Nigeria. There is a need for timelines. If there are no timelines, there's no measurement. If you can't measure, if there are no timelines, that means that there are no KPIs. If there are no KPIs, there is no evaluation. So if there is no evaluation, then you can't measure for success or failure. So I love the approach in giving them timelines. We must provide timelines. It's very, very important. Even when we elect people into public office, there are timelines. The program we are doing, there's a timeline for this program we are doing. Everything in life is subjected to time. There is time for everything. So you don't have eternity to carry out your function. So it is important for them to be given timelines, and that is also important for them. That's why, in fact, their confirmation should have been subjected to whatever timelines and benchmarks that has been given to them by the National Assembly. If you perform, you'll be confirmed. If you are not performing, it should not be confirmed. So I agree with the position of Badaru, the Minister of Defense, the former governor of Jigawa State, with respect to providing the generals with timelines, so that the issue raised by Uwaja, one of the police PRO in the 90s, when he spoke about generals not doing anything but drinking pepper soup and the rest of it.
All right, these are as much stories as we can take this morning on Breakfast Central. Thank you so much for joining us and with your very brilliant analysis this morning. We look forward to having you join us again.
It's a pleasure to be with you. Thank you for having me. Have a wonderful day.
You as well.